It's cruel that the only alien on Earth is being mistreated from time to time, but it's Roger. So what gives? In the first episode of this video, A.T. the abusive terrestrial, Roger got the treatment he'll never forget. Steve was preparing heavily for his chemistry lab work. He was trying to memorize the halogen elements, and he and I can't believe that he's forgetting the only halogen element that has and teen in one word. Roger comes along to distract him, but Steve was about to be distracted from fitting the element astatine into his head. While Steve was mixing elements to form a compound, Roger came and mixed the wrong elements, causing a smoke, and this really ticked Steve off.
I've had it with you, Roger.
Ouch!
I'm your alien.
Well, not anymore. This really hurts Roger, and he goes on singing a song.
When I was...
So sad, poor little Roger. Hurt Roger gets drunk in the middle of the road, loses his disguise, and loses his clothes while scaling a fence into someone's yard. He's found by a boy. Meanwhile, Stan and his lovely wife, Francine, fought in the car. What's the best place to if not in a soda factory? Well, there are plenty more places, but oh well. They realize that Mr. Pibbs is being shut down, and they take the Pibb Mobile to try and keep the place running. They try to convince a crowd, but when the administrators ask for the Pibbs Mobile, Francine hits them right in the gut, and they drive home with the Pibbs Mobile. Mr. Pibbs, the real Mr. Pibbs, was brought to their house, and Stan and Francine realize that their love can thrive, with or without Mr. Pibbs. But where is the Pibbles Mobile? The kid finds Roger and persuades him into being his own alien. Not long after, the kid starts beating up Roger anytime Roger tries to have his way.
Oh my God!
Or do something he likes. The boy has got Roger shaking like a vibrator and has also given him a purple eye. Upon seeing this, Steve was furious, but his advances to try and make Roger see the truth fell on deaf ears. Roger goes back, and this time he's become an actual slave. They hatch a plan to lie to the kid that Roger needs to go home. Remember the Pibbs Mobile that was nowhere to be found? Here it is. As Roger's pretend alien ship. After hitting the kid in the nuts, Roger and Steve ride away in the Pibbs Mobile. In this episode, You Det Your Life, Roger loses the only edge he's got over Stan and gets thrown out of the house without a second thought. What's he going to do for Stan to take him back? Let's find out. After a night of drinking, Roger runs out of a bar and nearly steps in front of an oncoming bus. Luckily, Stan saves him just in time. Haley points out that this makes them even, as Roger previously saved Stan during their escape from Area 51. Klaus then suggests that Roger no longer needs to stay, an idea Roger dismisses at first. However, Stan becomes fixated on it, and Roger ultimately decides to move out of the house. Francine persuades Roger to come back, and they discover Stan has already replaced him with Andy Dick. Roger assumes Stan will quickly tire of Andy's obnoxious behavior and welcome him back. To Roger's surprise, Stan refuses to ditch Andy, despite Andy's annoying, no, twice as annoying as Roger. Because why exactly would a grown man do this?
Get in this car!
And he also did this. This leaves Roger heartbroken.
I'm so alone!
Meanwhile, Steve and his friends struggle to get their sci-fi club announcement read at school. When Zach, the PA announcer, goes on a tirade and is replaced by Steve, the power quickly goes to Steve's head. His friends, Snot and Barry, try to dethrone him but end up with similar god complexes. Eventually, Principal Lewis removes all students from announcements, but is caught talking about his past as a drug runner with the mic still on. Roger moves into the YMCA, where Francine finds him and advises him to remind Stan of all the good times they shared. Roger decides to meet Stan at the zoo, hoping to talk without Andy present. However, Stan shows up with Andy, ruining Roger's plan.
I just wish things could go back to the way they were.
Roger believes the only way to get Stan back is to save his life again. So, he pushes Stan into the polar bear enclosure, intending to rescue him. But when Roger and Andy fight over who gets to save Stan, the polar bear ends up, doing this to Stan and this also. Roger realizes that to save Stan, he must retrieve the fanny pack he lost during their Area 51 escape. He finds the fanny pack and applies a special salve to Stan's legs, causing them to grow back. But it grows back as…
Don't worry, they'll grow to full size.
Yeah, baby legs. Honestly, Roger is a jerk who deserves what he got in the episode Franny 911. Francine devises a sweet plan to reconcile Stan and Roger after a major argument by kidnapping Roger, hoping to prove to Roger that Stan still cares about him. Just in case you're wondering what happened, Roger turned Stan's whole study room to a Turkish hot spring, and it landed us here.
He hates me!
Stan got a call from the kidnapper. He dashed out like he was in a hurry to the location they gave him, but in truth, he was going to the cinema. She calls him again after seeing him at home all comfy, and he still didn't show up. Later, Stan tricked her into climbing the roof to get a message from Roger, who he said was going home, and that's when Stan said,
Of course!
"Oh, that's the dumb thing she was doing." She confronts Roger at the hotel where he's staying, and he laughs at her plan. And at this point, she could not take half of his inconsiderate attitude anymore.
You whine and you complain?
She tells him that if he doesn't start treating people better, he's out of the house. This forces Roger to reconsider how he's been acting. For about a year, he manages to be nice to everyone. However, being nice takes a toll on Roger's health. His alien physiology begins to deteriorate, symbolized by a flower gradually wilting. As Roger lies on his deathbed like a leprosy patient, he explains that his species can't survive without being jerks. If they're too nice, they die. With this revelation, Roger decides he needs to return to his usual self. To restore his health, Roger lashes all the insults he can on Steve, and just as it feels he's going too far, Stan lets him take the final shot. Francine, seeing that Roger is back to normal, returns to enabling his behavior. However, she strikes a balance, allowing Stan to beat Roger up whenever he deserves it. Like now that he called Stan in a… I can't say it, but take a look at this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's some good whooping. Roger got a taste of his own medicine in this episode. Great space roaster. And even he couldn't swallow the pill he involuntarily forces down people's throats. It's Roger's birthday, and instead of the family's plan to party at the bowling alley, Roger insists on being roasted. Meanwhile, at work,
Who threw that?
that was irrelevant. I just wanted to show you the humor. Stan finds out that the CIA has been bought by the Chia Pet Corporation, and Sanders and a family will be sent into space for a year to test Chia Pet growth on a space station, and the whole reason is to make the moon look like this.
The dream of an afro.
Whoever that guy is, he's really pissed about these Chia Pet people. Later, the family held Roger's birthday at a pricey steakhouse and delivered the brutal roast Roger requested. At first, everything seems fine. But when Roger removes his glasses, hurt by their harsh words, Roger vows to turn his life around. He gets a new job, sobers up, starts working out, and even hires a life coach. Roger seems to have everything together and takes up jogging. Meanwhile, Klaus notices that the family's appears unscrambled, and the family rushes into the living room just in time. And their suspicions about Roger grow, but when they follow him, everything seems normal. That night, as they laugh off their doubts, the house is suddenly shot up. Roger convinces them they're in danger and leads them to the car for a quick escape, only for them to discover the brakes have been cut. Roger admits that he has been trying to kill them and won't stop until he succeeds. He attacks Stan, but is taken down by Steve with a tranquilizer gun. Stan decides to put Roger in the most secure place he can think of, but Roger soon escapes and makes his way back home. Roger declares that there's no place on Earth where they can hide from him, so the family takes the Sanders family's place on the space mission. 3 days later, Klaus goes missing, and Steve is sent to find him. Steve locates Klaus floating in a washing machine, but before Klaus can warn him, Roger attacks. Roger sets off alarms. He catches Francine and Haley in the kitchen while Stan heads for the escape pod. Just when Stan thinks he's safe, he triggers Roger's trap. The family wakes up tied up to chairs, and Roger demands they roast each other to feel the pain he felt. In this episode, Roger passes the bar. Steve and his friends meet their new neighbor, Charlotte, who surprises them by revealing she's a registered offender. Misinterpreting her friendliness as a "come on, let's get this down," the boys help her with yard work, hoping it will lead to a little happy ending for them, especially after she said this.
Okay, but it's just work, nothing else.
Who would blame those kids? I want to root around in her backyard too. They even remodel her bedroom, only to find out she was using them to flip the house. Charlotte leaves, explaining her intention was to teach them a trade, not Steve later reflects that the experience unexpectedly shaped their futures, turning them all into onto the main stuff. I just needed to get that part out of the way. Roger starts his day at his bar, greeting his overnight customer, Mick. As the day goes on, the stress from dealing with his family and demanding customers begins to take a toll. He receives an offer from Toby to sell the bar, but Roger declines. However, as the stress continues to build, Roger suffers a heart attack and is rushed to the hospital. Though eager to return to work, he's forced to stay and recover. Francine brings Toby to the hospital to convince Roger to sell the bar. And Roger, overwhelmed with emotion, reluctantly agrees. With the bar out of his hands, Roger did my morning wake-up routine. Yup, that's me 27 times in the morning when I wake up. He starts making breakfast for them and planning activities, but they quickly move on with their own lives, leaving him feeling abandoned. In an attempt to find peace, Roger tries to relax, but it doesn't work for him. Hearing a commotion from his former bar, he heads over to find it transformed into an upscale establishment now called Roger's Spot. Shocked by the changes and thrown out of the bar, Roger decides he wants to buy it back. When Roger confronts Toby about repurchasing the bar, he learns of plans to expand the brand nationwide and is asked to be the face of the new chain. Roger reluctantly stars in commercials for the new version of the bar, but the increased pressure starts affecting his home life, and Francine worries that he's worse off than before. At a grand event, Roger meets Mick, who has turned his life around since leaving Roger's old bar. As Roger tries to involve Mick in the event, he realizes the bar has lost its original charm. Roger sets out to bring down the new chain and get it back. Roger was a victim for about 2 seconds in this episode. Virtual insanity. But the other victims didn't have it nice at all. While playing poker with his friends, Stan watches Dick using his avatar Black to vent his frustration after losing. Men, that name is just violating a lot of rules. In the middle of the game, Francine calls to remind Stan that he's about to miss Steve's birthday yet again. Stan rushes home with a stuffed rabbit full of as a last-minute gift. As they watch home videos, Stan notices that he isn't in any of them, always having been too busy with other things. After Steve declines his invitation to a baseball game, Stan starts to worry that he's missing his chance to bond with his son. Desperate to connect, Stan creates an avatar, Phyllis, a busty blonde girl, and sends her Steve's way. Did we hit a bump? 'Cause I just tripped. After a date at a baseball game, Steve tries to kiss Phyllis goodnight, but Phyllis awkwardly rubs his head instead. Steve, thinking Phyllis only wants to be friends, shifts his attention to Chelsea, who seems interested in him. When Stan realizes his plan is failing, and Steve plans to ask Chelsea to the homecoming dance, he becomes desperate. Through Phyllis, he offers to take his He, without breathing, agrees, who eagerly accepts. He whips out his schedule, and that's the stuff. My boy's got big plans. But I was expecting Chelsea to pull up with a, "I'll do anything, please," but she's just as dull as my drawing board. Despite his growing discomfort, Stan is determined to go through with the plan. At home, Steve asks Francine to teach him how to shave.
Hey Mom, can you teach me how to shave?
With the look on his face, I hope he didn't do that to his machine down there. Meanwhile, Roger steals a limo and starts his own limo service. When a group of passengers ride without paying, Roger embarks on a mission of revenge. He immediately runs over one of the culprits and attends the funeral to run down 2 more. As the remaining 2 grow anxious, one heads to the restroom, where he sees the limo tires roll by. When he opens the stall door, the final survivor boards a plane to escape, only to see Roger on the wing in his limo. Roger crashes into him, causing the plane to explode. As he and Klaus parachute down, Roger sabotages a stewardess's chute, leaving her to plummet as they crash-land safely. Francine bursts into the CIA office and discovers what's happening and steps in to stop him. She's unable to access the Avatar chamber and unable to beat down the Avatar, but what's that over there? Francine suits up in a powerlift mecha and charges in to keep Steve's intact. She tackles Phyllis just as Steve is in the bathroom preparing himself. Francine convinces Stan that he should accept his relationship with Steve as it is, without resorting to extreme measures. Phyllis breaks up with Steve. When Steve tries to reconnect with Chelsea, she's no longer interested. In this episode, Stan's best friend Steve really wants a dog and did a whole presentation, but Stan is not willing to bend to his demands. Francine, however, reminds Stan of his own childhood, when his mother tricked him into killing his dog Freddy after his father left. Despite this, Francine goes ahead and surprises Steve with a dog named Kisses, Stan, initially reluctant, slowly starts to warm up to kisses. Late one night, unable to sleep, Stan heads to the living room to watch TV, and Kisses joins him, which solidifies Stan's growing attachment to the dog. Tragedy strikes when a hot air balloon filled with pirate cats crashes and lands on Kisses, severely injuring him. Stan threw a frisbee to the rod, and just when we thought we were about to lose Kisses, he easily jumped over the car. But trying to return, an air balloon filled with cats crushed right into Kisses. Stan rushes him to the vet, who can only keep the dog barely alive. Francine suggests it might be best to let Kisses go, but Stan, haunted by the loss of Freddy, refuses to lose another dog. Determined to save Kisses, Stan tries to research pet care at the library but finds nothing useful. Instead, he stumbles across a flyer for Dr. Lizzie's alternative pet care services. Stan brings Kisses to Dr. Lizzie, but things take a bizarre turn. The eccentric vet turns Kisses into, well, take a look. Stan takes the dog home. The family is horrified by the new Kisses, but Stan is still unwilling to let him go. Finally, Freddy's spirit appears to Stan and reassures him that it's okay to move on. Taking this to heart, Stan decides to send Kisses off with a literal bang, blowing him up with dynamite. In the afterlife, Kisses is welcomed by Freddy, who introduces him to some cute female dogs and monster creatures they need to battle. Stan finds himself overwhelmed by work and lacking free time for his personal interests. One night he tried reading.
Base at Poliarni.
That was fast. Dick informs him about a new pill developed by the CIA that makes it feel like you've had 8 hours of sleep. Excited by the prospect, Stan starts taking the pills himself. With his newfound energy, he's able to stay up all night. He finally finishes the hunt for Red October, learns to play the guitar, and becomes obsessed with a video game called Beatman. However, Stan accidentally reveals the pills to Francine, who insists on trying them too, promising not to interfere with his personal time. Despite her promise, Francine tried to blend Francine time with Stan time,
Francine time could visit your...
but didn't work out. Can't believe this guy just said no to free Bunda. After realizing that she doesn't have many personal interests of her own, Francine takes up an unexpected passion, marine biology. She begins studying fish, and her dedication pays off when she publishes an article in a well-known scientific journal about the habitat of the colossal squid. Her work earns her international recognition, and she is soon invited to join an expedition to find the elusive creature. Meanwhile, Stan wins first place in a Beatman competition, but the victory feels empty when he sees other couples celebrating together. Realizing how much he misses Francine, Stan impulsively walks in a scuba suit all the way to Antarctica, where Francine is searching for the colossal squid. Just as she discovers the creature, Stan panics and shoots it. He admits to Francine that he needs her in his life, and despite her frustration, Francine denies to the crew that she found the squid. Meanwhile, Roger and Steve try their hand at writing films but struggle to come up with something cohesive. Roger's outdated ideas, involving pizza delivery boys, clash with Steve's wild sci-fi plots featuring robots. They repeatedly fail to impress the producers. While brainstorming in a diner, they miss all of this. Nothing is obvious. He's just gonna start a story of two androids out. Love the American Dad style. In this episode, Roger messed up and fell in love. Roger danced through the dinning, only to find out that Haley had munched the last piece of his beloved potato bread. Meanwhile, Stan and Francine were out shopping for a new Hamisioki Jeep. Later, Roger overheard Haley singing in the shower and was genuinely impressed. He couldn't help but invite her to perform at his bar, where her talent quickly attracted a growing audience. On the other hand, Stan was struggling to sell his SUV. After being offered a meager $10,000 from a dealer, his frustration boiled over like an erupting volcano. Determined to sell the car on his own terms, he launched a series of failed attempts. I'm still gonna add this part where he lost a fight to a floater. Seriously, how do you lose to a floating obstacle? As Haley's popularity soared, Roger found himself developing feelings for her, and that's where he messed the F up. He struggled to suppress his emotions, even firing her from her singing gig to distance himself. When Haley asked for an explanation, he just hid behind a newspaper crying his heart out like a baby and playing his recorder.
I said beat it!
Roger opened up about his feelings only for her to turn him down flat. In a fit of desperation, he resorted to drastic measures, thinking they'd help him move on.
Steve, I freaked out.
But nothing worked. In a shocking twist, Roger kidnapped Haley and brought her to the Lanston Ice Factory, planning to skin her. Just as he was about to execute his twisted plot, Jeff unexpectedly appeared. Seizing the moment, Haley revealed her mutual love for Jeff, leaving Roger heartbroken. Unfazed, Roger shifted his attention, contemplating whether skinning Jeff would be a better alternative. However, that plan also fell apart spectacularly, as he did skin the guy, but it turns out all he had was a crush on her. Desperate to make a sale, Stan organized an event featuring a bathing beauty and a lion, hoping to draw attention to his vehicle. But chaos ensued when the lion nearly pounced on the girl, leading to an unexpected scenario. Both ended up inside Stan's SUV, which then rolled into a power pole and erupted into flames. In the midst of the chaos, Stan quietly slipped back into the house, leaving the disaster behind. For the last episode of this video, the unincluded, the guys received an invitation to a party thrown by Mertz, supposedly a gathering for the cool kids, only to discover they were set up. Later, while at a restaurant, they flipped through photos taken by the other kids and overheard a mysterious janitor suggesting they host their own party. Inspired, Steve decided to throw a bash for all the kids who never got invited to parties, especially since his parents were off on vacation in Bosnia. Steve's party turned out to be a hit. When Mertz unexpectedly showed up, the guys seized the opportunity to return the favor, warning them that they couldn't go back to the party. The guys were shocked to see that they remained friends in the future, but the reason for their bond became clear. Mertz had stolen a time machine and disguised himself as the janitor to suggest the party idea, ensuring their bright future wouldn't materialize. As most of the guys agreed to go along with the plan, Snot suddenly vanished. While searching for Snot, future Steve and Snot revealed that after high school, Toshi had stopped speaking to them, and Barry had tragically died in a Formula One accident. Just then, a stunning girl showed up and flirted with Steve.
Have you seen Snot?
Seizing the moment, they made out at the party while future Steve transformed into a stereotypical jock, and Snot fell into a life of misfortune. Steve wanted to use the time machine to correct their fate, but they soon discovered it was missing. Snot blamed Steve for his bleak future and suggested a scheme to boost Snot's popularity. However, Steve's attempts to talk to a girl ended disastrously, prompting Snot to give up. Future Steve became increasingly muscular, while Snot found himself in prison. They tried again by mingling with smokers, but nothing worked. In a last-ditch effort, Steve encouraged Snot to embrace his nerdiness instead of trying to be cool, but this also failed. Realizing they had long since drifted apart, they decided to dance in their underwear at the party to reclaim their status as outcasts. Ironically, their antics were misinterpreted as cool, leading them to completely. This bizarre stunt reversed future Steve and Snot back to their original selves and threw the party into chaos. However, various future versions of themselves greeted them later, hinting that their journey was far from over. Meanwhile, Roger and Haley were out for dinner when Roger took offense at a compliment given to Haley's choice instead of his. Determined to prove a point, he suggested they disguise themselves and swap their orders to see how it would play out. Despite Haley making a mistake, she was still praised for her meal, fueling Roger's frustration. In a fit of jealousy, Roger stalked the waitress during her off hours, disguising himself as a waiter to take her order. When she and her date ordered the same dish, he ran out in a panic, jumping into the car with Haley, proudly announcing that he had scalped the waitress. Later, during their vacation to visit former Olympic sites, Stan asked Francine if she had ever been in an Eastern Bloc stadium. Francine wasn't sure and asked if a stadium full of Romanians counted as being in the Eastern Bloc.